Are you an investigative professional? Did you know you can find the best private investigator resources using investigatorstoolbox.com? This resource community was built exclusively for licensed investigators and investigative professionals. You can network directly with members, educate yourself through free webinars and blogs, and even create your own customizable research library. Membership starts for as little as 49 cents a day. Download the Investigators Toolbox app or visit our webpage at www.investigators-toolbox.com.
I want to talk to everybody today about ScopeNow.com. ScopeNow has been a big-time sponsor of this program for quite some time, and I just love their service. I've been using them since the beginning. I'm one of their beta customers, and it's been so awesome to see them grow into the business that they are today, and just how they just keep reinventing themselves and pushing themselves to get more and more information. What it comes down to is ScopeNow is a tool that you definitely need to use if you do social media investigations, any internet research, and really spending less time digging around and looking for information. I think is one of the best points of how ScopeNow can help you. Their AI platform, their analytics are amazing. You really get an idea of what you need. You're reducing the time, you're reducing the manpower that you're spending on doing this research, because they're essentially doing it for you, and they're doing it correctly, which is most important. One of the new things that they're actually offering is this flagging system where you can flag behaviors and really highlight and look out for fraud. If you're doing a lot of fraud research, this is a fantastic tool, and you can set up alerts. So you have particular people that you're looking at, you can actually set up alerts to get notifications when the criteria that you set up is actually is flagged and goes off. It's really, really amazing. And their relationship and association analytics are top notch, really cutting edge and really, really cool. When they brought that out on version 3, it was a game changer. I mean, really being able to see how people interact together and having that relationship, analysis is really, really something that's cool. One of the other things about being involved with ScopeNow is their ability to offer webinars. Their team is cutting edge on putting together and getting out really, really great content. If you're a member of ScopeNow, if you know who they are, you've seen them around on LinkedIn, you'll know that they're constantly doing webinars on these new websites that are coming out, and they're really staying on top of it. And don't forget, any reports that you generate, you can actually white label those reports and put your own logos on and really make them look professional, which could equate to more billing for you as well. So check them out today. It's www.scopenow.com. They're a great, great company. They should be one of the tools in your toolbox, along with whatever kind of search engines you do. You need to make sure that ScopeNow is a part of that suite. Scopenow.com.
Is a good case management system keeping you from taking your business to the next level? Crosstracks is the premier case management system for the investigative community. They're the only SOC 2 certified case management software available. Visit crosstracks.com, tell them you're a listener, and save even more. Get a plan in place for the new year to grow your business to the next level. Welcome to PI Perspectives. What the heck is the Metaverse? Matt welcomes PI Scot Walker to come on and discuss the trends of this industry and how the shift to Metaverse has changed best practices. This is just a great episode with some great info. Please welcome Scot Walker and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everybody to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today I am really happy to welcome somebody I bumped into just in the streets in Las Vegas, which was very random and weird. But I want to welcome Scot Walker to the program. Scott, how are you?
I'm doing good, Matt. Thanks for having me, buddy. I appreciate it. And it was nice literally running into you. And I said, don't you have a podcast? I know you. Oh, yeah.
And the even stranger part is like we had met before.
Literally months before.
Right. Yeah. We met in Arizona at the Alpi Association event last year in September, and you were one of the speakers there. And I know the organizers like, you got to talk to Scott. You got to talk to Scott. And you and I, we got a brief introduction, but you were like in the zone, kind of game face, and I was in the zone, got to get subs for Toolbox. So
that's right. Oh, you're doing great there. Yeah. Lots of people signed up, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah, that was a great event. So that was so funny because I don't know, it was like 50, 55 people maybe. And I know the organizer's like, we usually get 100 and a lot, but man, it was so great. The people that were there were in it. I did get a lot of people sign up for Toolbox from there, which was great. And the quality of the speakers, other than that Walker guy.
Yeah, that
Awesome.
guy went on too long.
Yeah.
Well, they asked me, hey, what do you want to talk about? Or would you like to talk about something? So I gave them, I think, 3 topics, and they came back and they chose this one that we'll probably talk a little bit about. And then they said, oh, you have an hour and a half. And I'm like, I've never had that long to talk. What am I going to talk about? So I really told a story, which was kind of fun to do, put my thoughts into a story and then, build it out from there. And hopefully it was educational for folks.
Yeah. So I got invited to talk at the Kansas City event, which ended up getting postponed because of COVID. They wanted me to do like 4 hours, and I was freaking out. I'm like, 4 hours? What the heck am I going to talk about for 4 hours? And they're like, well, you can break it down into 2 different topics if you want. Maybe we'll do like a pre-lunch and post-lunch with separate topics. I'm like,
you should have turned it into a podcast. Matt, that could have been like 5 episodes for you, 6 episodes. Just break it up.
Or from Joe Rogan, it'd just be 1.
Right.
So, I'm not Joe Rogan. So yeah, we bumped into each other in Vegas, and we were chatting about, you coming on and doing a show. And I thought, there's a lot of things going on that nobody talks about, and you're so grounded with what you do. And I just love your perspective on things. I thought it'd be really cool to come on and talk about it. But before we get into all that stuff, Walker and Associates is your business. So tell me a little bit about how you got into the business and what you're doing now.
The traits of any good investigator is that you have your tenacity and you're curious. And that's what I was raised with. I'm actually the black sheep, or what I like to say, the redheaded stepchild, because I am, of my family. I grew up in Los Angeles in kind of a Hollywood family, grew up around people like Roy Rogers and Dale Evans, like they were normal people in my life, which is kind of funny to say. Right. But I had started a project to get into that industry and into that business. My dad was a director and a producer and written a book and worked for Disney and things. And so I thought that was interesting, but I had this sense of service and I wanted to serve my country. And growing up in Los Angeles, I had no other branches of the military to influence me other than the Coast Guard, right? I grew up on a beach in Huntington Beach. And so I saw Coast Guards on lifeguards, and I thought it was, I could go do that. I like to swim. Right. And so I joined the Coast Guard right out of high school. And when the recruiter, all these recruiters lie to you, but they're like, hey, this is the job that you qualified for. And I was like, well, I don't want to do that job. I'm interested in what, like a public affairs type role. And they said, oh, well, this job, it's called port security. And it's kind of like being on Cops. And I was like, oh, I love that TV show. It totally got me. Right. So I go and had no aspirations to be in law enforcement at all. I just wanted to serve my country. And sure enough, they put me through a bunch of training and police-like training, I'll say. And that was really my influence, which would kind of shift me into wanting to kind of become a sheepdog and serve in a different capacity, and transitioned my whole college curriculum over to criminal justice and started studying that, trying to understand it, and really kind of fell in love with the protector mentality. Sure. But along with that was I want to learn more. And so as I was coming through my figuring out what I wanted to do and coming through school and working, I was a reservist in the Coast Guard. I had the opportunity to meet with the special agent in charge of the Coast Guard Investigative Service, which you don't know them. They've never had a TV show like NCIS or a movie like Air Force OSI, but they are the equivalent to those things. And I had an opportunity to run into this person, and I was doing some work where I had a higher than top secret clearance. And so when he talked to me, he said, oh, you have a higher clearance than I do. Do you want to work with us? And I'm like, I don't even know what you all do. Right. And that was my introduction into investigations. And I joined them, and September 11th happened, changed the world. And
Sure.
and shortly after that, I had an opportunity to join the Air Force Reserve and became a special agent there. So I was a special agent in multiple branches of the military. And after 20 years of doing that, I thought there's other things out there.
Yeah.
And again, just being curious and just wanting to talk to people and try and find out things, I ran into a mentor at a conference, ATAP, Association of Threat Assessment Professionals. And just off a fluke, ran into somebody who had a previous law enforcement background, working in the private sector, happened to work for a company you probably never heard of, Lucasfilm, and he was their head of security.
Who are those hacks?
Well, the funny thing was, his phone rings. We're at this conference before the conference started. His phone rings and it's R2D2. And I'm like, look at this nerd. Now I'm a Star Wars nerd too. I grew up in the 70s. It changed my life. Right. But I'm like, I don't have a Star Wars phone. This guy, what is this guy, like the head of security for George Lucas? And so after he gets off the phone, I turned to him and I said, how's George doing? And he goes, oh, he's fine. He just wanted to know about something, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, no, come on, seriously. And he goes, no, I'm the head of security for Lucasfilm. Nice. And then he became kind of my private sector mentor, if you will, and helped me understand the private sector better. When Lucasfilm was acquired by Disney, I talked to him about how, what are you going to do? How does that affect you? How do you approach deciding whether to go with one company over the other? It was kind of my education in business. Right. And that's what led to my transition to Silicon Valley. Right. And so after that, I ended up joining a company that was really kind of in a pre-growth phase called NVIDIA. And I joined them to start an investigations and executive protection program. And like everything, best laid plans, those things don't always happen the way they're supposed to. And I got thrown into a bunch of different projects. And eventually, a couple of years later, started investigations and executive protection program with them. Right. Evolved into more compliance and ethics and those types of corporate.
God's timing, right? We never know what's going to happen there. So I think everybody wants to know, like, did you get that secret guest role as a stormtrooper in one of the Star Wars movies?
I had to sign an NDA, but I will tell you the funny story, because my kids are all Star Wars dorks too, and I think I have a stormtrooper back behind me on this call. But the funny thing was, I take my kids, and this is in 2012. To where Lucasfilm is headquartered in San Francisco in what's called the Presidio. It used to be an Army base. Now it's a kind of a national park, but it's got businesses and homes. People live there. And that's where Lucasfilm is headquartered. And so I take them to San Francisco just saying, hey, we're going to go on a vacation. We get a hotel near the Presidio, walk over to the Presidio, and it's a beautiful park. And there's lots of things to look at. As we're walking through there, we come upon a fountain that is topped with Yoda. And my kid's like, oh my gosh, this is so weird. This is really cool. What is this place? And I'm like, well, this is Lucasfilm. We're coming here for a tour tomorrow. And so I took the kids on a tour of Lucasfilm and Skywalker Ranch, and they loved it. And they tell the story to this day to their friends, and they can't believe that they've had, we were, the head of security was gracious enough to show us around and give us a great experience. But that's the no crazy roles for me in the upcoming Disney flicks, but
none that you're going to admit anyway.
No, too short to be a short stormtrooper. Too short.
You're going to be a droid or something, right?
That's right. Yeah,
Kenny Baker, that poor guy. I can see pictures of him just sitting in that R2D2.
Oh my gosh,
man, just like
in the 70s.
Do this,
yeah, with a hairdryer blowing cool air, trying to cool him off. Yeah,
so long. Yeah, we're just geeking out here. All right.
Sorry. Off topic.
Back to the topic at hand. So your business now, would you consider yourself a small business? Do you have?
Yeah, very small business. The transition even for me to leave the Bay Area, I'd worked for NVIDIA, I'd worked for Facebook and a bunch of iconic brands. I'd been a consultant back to some of those brands. But it's funny, but early on in 2020, like January of 2020, my wife and I decided we've got to move from the Bay Area. And we weren't thinking that the pandemic was going to lock everything up, but we decided we're going to pick a couple locations to go to. One of them happened to be Phoenix, Arizona, where we have friends and family. And then the other one was Denver, Colorado. And again, we're from Los Angeles, so we don't know what the white stuff on the ground is. I'm told it's snow. I don't know for sure.
Light and magic. That's what it is.
Yeah. So we go to Denver, Colorado, and it's a snowstorm, and we drove in the snowstorm to go visit some places. And after that trip, my wife was like, "We're moving to Phoenix."
Yeah, there you go.
There it is. So we moved to Phoenix, and I start this opportunity, and because Phoenix or Arizona in general is a great place to start a business.
Beautiful.
And
awesome.
Very low overhead. So that's how we got out here, and that's how I started that. And we're not even a year old and still growing and trying to figure out how do we enter the market and like everybody else in the world, trying to figure out how do we come back from COVID. And my offerings are like everybody else's, kind of do any kind of investigation that comes across the desk.
Yeah. So that's a good topic that we're going to hammer in on. We're going to take a break here. When we come back, really just the state of the industry and the state of where everything's heading here. We wanted to kind of touch on that and just give our 2 cents worth on it. Now we're getting further away from, shelter in place and back to doing things, but there's still specters creeping up here and there. I know in New York, we've had a couple of little minor outbreaks.
Yeah.
Philadelphia went back to doing masks. And, so we're not completely through it, but everybody sit tight. When we come back, we're going to jump into the state of investigations. So sit tight.
Satellite Investigations is the premier investigation resource in New York State. Founder Matthew Spaier was named PI Magazine's Investigator of the Year. If you need investigative assistance in New York State, visit their site at satellitepi.com. Get results, not excuses. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Hey, the National Association of Legal Investigators have announced their next in-person conference. It's scheduled to take place June 22nd through June 24th in Louisville, Kentucky. Visit nali.com for more information, nali.com. Check out the latest issue of PI Magazine, available online or via hard copy. Visit pimagazine.com to learn more.
And welcome back to PI Perspective. This is Matt Spaier, your host. Today we're joined by Scot Walker. Scott, welcome back to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So, wow, I didn't know your huge background in Hollywood. That's pretty awesome. When you were talking about Coast Guard and being recruited, the first thing that came to my mind was like Baywatch.
Yeah.
Are they throwing the calendars with the Baywatch girls in there? Going,
Sure.
Yeah, I didn't sign up for this.
No.
So
yeah, Hasselhoff.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, eating hamburgers somewhere. Poor guy. So before we took the break, we teased a little bit about the future of investigations, and your company's kind of new to the industry, but you have an interesting perspective on this, and we specifically wanted to talk about like the metaverse and how that is affecting investigations on a whole, and the temperature and direction that we're going to go on things. So what's your take on all that?
Yeah, technology is changing. It's easy to say, right? We talked about this before. Technology is really changing the way we do business. And I always thought, by the way, that we would get to more comfortable being remote, or more comfortable being wherever we wanted to find the work. We're going to go find the work.
Right.
The pandemic really just sped that up. To where companies now had to do it. And my sense was actually, I'll take you back to early 2020 when the pandemic started and we all went into lockdown. And there was a great amount of uncertainty. My feeling was, okay, once we figure out how to operate in this world, we become comfortable, we'll do it.
Right.
And sure enough, the first year goes by and not any real significant change in the way we figured out how to do business, but business pivoted really quickly, right? So we're doing it live now, we're on Zoom and we're able to connect this way. We're connecting from coast to coast and internationally now, which I think is all really a good thing. The more that we can connect with technology, the more that we can trade with each other, the more that we can talk with each other as real time as possible. The better, the less we'll want to kill each other, Russia and Ukraine aside.
Yeah, Russia. Right. Yeah, definitely. So I was telling you earlier, I was doing a conference today with England. I was talking to Michael Court, Conflict International. And, it's so nice to have the video conference and be able to chat with him and another guy. And we're just making it work. We just got to figure out the time, time zones.
The time zones will never change, right?
That will never change. Although apparently maybe a little bit, right? And
daylight savings.
Daylight savings is history.
Yeah. Which is good because we don't practice daylight savings for some reason in Arizona. But but the more we can have these conversations in as much real time and people be comfortable with that, I think the better the world is. Now, these types of operations don't work for everyone, right? And we realize that. And so I always felt like we'd go back to a 60-40 type model, where 60% of people who want to be in the office or can be in an office will be in an office.
Yeah, banking industry, like they refuse to go remote. I have several friends in banking and they're like, oh, we got to go back in, and then it's like slowly but surely, even attorneys, and that's, will they be in
our customers, our customer base?
Yeah. And you've actually seen the Bar Association change their opinions on brick and mortar, which was interesting. Right. And it started to happen before COVID, but COVID really pushed it over the line where, it used to be like you had to have an office space. Like if you were advertising as a law firm, you needed to be in that particular city or state or whatever. You couldn't just say, yeah, we're I've passed the bar and I can practice law here, but I'm really based in so-and-so. Right. So, they changed that law, making it a little bit more, I guess, easier to not have a dedicated space or have shared space. Because that's the other thing too. I mean, we work as a green space, all those, that's a whole nother issue for another show.
That's it. Yeah. Commercial real estate. How's that going to be affected, to your point? Are we going to be comfortable with all being in a WeWork, or will commercial real estate have to shift to that kind of, multi-tenant model, where you rent a desk or rent a space, rent an office space?
So let's touch in and double down here on the attorneys here, because that is our bread and butter, at least for me anyways. And I know most investigators. So this whole change in the metaverse, what is the metaverse to you? How do you define that?
Oh boy, that's maybe a whole nother conversation, but I'll try and keep it simple. We refer to metaverse or any kind of multi-massive online platform. MMO is sometimes what it's referred to, maybe better referred to as. But it's also known as Web 3.0. Elon Musk talk about Web 3 or Web 3.0. And this is the new frontier. And I've talked about this. I was on a webinar a couple of weeks ago talking about the risks in the metaverse and things like that. There's more opportunity than risk, but like in life. But the metaverse is a way to digitally and online connect us all. In a sense, being on this Zoom call is a version of the metaverse. And what we're seeing is that just like the internet, when the internet, you're a Gen Xer like me. We remember that's what's great about our generation.
How dare you, sir?
I'm a millennial. It's great about our generation is we remember what analog was like,
Sure.
and we know what a phone book is, and we know what digital is like. And so early on, internet 1.0, if you will, was coming up. And we remember how we would get those discs in the mail from AOL, and you'd get minutes and you'd be able to log on and go do whatever you do.
Netscape.
And that evolved now. And as we're evolving into Web 3.0, one of the questions that I get commonly is, okay, who's going to pay for it? And like everything, who paid for Facebook? Zuck. Yeah. Zuck's going to pay for a version of the metaverse. Yeah. And so you'll have these big multinational companies, billionaires, that will be creating an environment where you can live, work, and play. Yeah. And the environment is more than likely going to be very much more in your face than the internet is, right? We all have cell phones. We all have screens in our face for most of the day now more than ever, especially us as investigators. How much time do you spend researching documents or researching a background or checking social media for something, or even running your own business?
Yeah,
we're on QuickBooks a lot too.
Let's tag it on that. So, yeah, we're bringing it back to the attorney portion of it, right? So, we want to be careful and make sure that they're not doing all that stuff and saying it's good enough. Right. They still got to be able to hire us to do these things. And it's a tough sell, right? Because they're like, oh, well, I just had my paralegal do it. Or, I'm pretty savvy on the internet. I know how that Google type thing works. Yeah, I can
Google that, myself.
Right? Yeah. And it's like, you need to educate them. That's not enough, or, evidentiary, right? When you need to get this introduced, you really want to tell everyone you're the one who did the research, or would you rather bring in Mr. Walker there, who's got this great background? That's
exactly how I put it to him. Who do you want to testify on the stand to the evidence? Right, I'm way better at this. And by the way, you can throw in my background from working in tech and working at Facebook. And I think I make a way better witness than, with respect to our paralegal partners. And they are very important to what we do. Right. But what I don't know about some of the listeners and our fellow investigators, but when I'm doing, if I find evidence that we need to pull from the internet or from social media, I've kind of moved away from just doing screenshots, because I understand deep fakes. I understand how those can be manipulated. It's not best evidence. Yep. And I'm actually recording now on the screen, recording my screen and recovering that information, because I think that's the best evidence, so that if a jury sees it, they can.
So there's a tool called Loom. If anyone's ever used it, it's fantastic, right? It literally records your desktop.
You have to,
it's genius. And what it does, it just gives you credibility, right? And we're not trying to knock the powers, like you had said, and all that, but they have a function and role in the firm. It's the same thing like with intakes. Don't have your paralegals do intakes. Don't have your attorneys do intakes, because they need to be doing attorney stuff. They need to be doing paralegal stuff. They got to be generating, bills of particular and pleadings and drafting motions and doing all that. So and you can't possibly dedicate the amount of time that you need to do research. That's the other thing too. And I think understanding that as a business owner, as an investigator, that is something that I really had a grasp with. Like, I don't want my team, my guys that are my field guys, doing my research anymore. Not because they're terrible at it. They're pretty darn good at it, but I need them out in the field doing stuff. And when I start bifurcating their responsibilities, they're not efficient. Right. No. So being able to find an in-house team to do my research and dedicating them, and hey, welcome to the metaverse, because these people can live anywhere and they can, your talent pool is that much greater. Huge. Because you can tap onto resources from all over the country, or they don't even necessarily need to be in the world as long as, their English is good or the research is good. And it comes down to personality,
Sure.
and that's one of the problems that we have as business owners, is that personalities of the younger folk, is trash. I mean, it's just garbage. People don't want to work.
Well, they see things differently than we do. I mean, I've got a Gen Y and a millennial in my house, and they like to tell me what's going on all the time. And
Sure.
one I really lean on for TikTok investigations, by the way, because he's really good at TikTok, which I am not.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, you think about the kids who came up and they were told by their parents, "Hey, you got to go to the top level college, and you got to get that underwater basket weaving or ancient English degree so that you can go pontificate on the world." And then they came out and they had hundreds, if not tens of thousands of dollars in tuition fees that they owe back to the school, and now they're working as a barista. Not to belittle baristas, I'm glad we have them. In fact, they're very hard to find nowadays.
Right.
So what do they want to do when they come into work? They want a raise. They want to make more. They want to work less. They want that work-life balance. And we're going into a world that is first of all, we're losing the greatest generation. Both physically, they're unfortunately passing away, and they're not in the economy anymore. They're not spending money. Same thing with baby boomer generation. Most of them are retiring and passing away. So what that leaves are the generations that we have today. And if they don't want to do the work, what does that mean for all of us that are doing the work? Right. Can we find the help? Can we, there are solutions that people don't want to talk about, but you touched on it.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. Like there's market share to be had. I mean, that's one thing that COVID really, really did. I mean, especially in New York for me anyways, I come out of it and, all of a sudden there's less competition. Now, why is there less competition? Well, some people are like, I don't want to do this door-to-door knocking thing. Like, I don't want to do this. Like, I got my pension, I got this and that. So there were a lot of folks that were doing our kind of work that their heart wasn't there.
Right.
Right. So now they're out, and you've got the challenge of, is the attorney going to try and do it themselves, or are they going to hire somebody? Right. Or are they going to hire somebody in-house? Because I've seen that now too, where they're like, okay, well, now I'm just going to, have an investigator in-house, and you got to battle that. Okay. Well, how do you battle that? Well, you battle it saying that's only one person. If you hire my business, you've got the disposal, not only of me and my team, however big that team is, maybe it's 3, maybe it's 7, maybe it's 10, but you also have my relationships now, which your in-house investigator doesn't have the 20 plus years experience that I have, and doesn't know the 20 plus years of experience, people, relationships that I have, the contacts that I have. Right. So are you cutting yourself short, thinking that you're saving some bucks, or you're controlling everything? And again, do you want the guy who works for you to go up and testify about something later? No, you don't want that. You need that separation.
That's what your contract resources are for.
Yeah.
And by the way, to your point, attorneys are becoming much more international as well. So their clientele are not necessarily in New York or in a physical fixed location. They have problems because the reality is, what we're seeing in Arizona, what you're seeing in New York, New Yorkers are moving to Miami. People from Los Angeles, Seattle, and San Francisco are moving to Phoenix, Arizona. Sure. So that's changing the dynamics of problems, right? So your client is an attorney. The attorney's client used to live in New York. Now they live in Miami.
Yeah.
So, now you're like, okay, but I've got a resource. I've got a buddy down there. I've got a connection down there that I went to a conference with.
Yeah.
And your resources just have to be much more spread now.
So I'll tell you a funny story real quick. So I was actually in Vegas at an IntelNet conference, right? And I got a phone call from one of my clients, and they're like, we have a rush assignment, and I'm not sure if you can help us, but our client relocated to Arizona, and our client, we found is incarcerated, and they're in jail in Maricopa County. We need somebody to go there. Right. So can you help us? And I'm like, okay, yeah, I have a huge network. I know a bunch of people in Arizona. I was just at the Alpi thing. I'm like, I'll take care of it. Right. So I start doing my back channel things and figuring out who I'm going to hire for this thing. And I come across a guy who's fantastic, who actually, yeah, I've got the pass to get into Maricopa County Prison, right? I was like, okay, you can't make this stuff up. This guy's making me look like $1 million. I go back to my client, no problem. We'll send the guy out there tomorrow, take care of it for you. They're like, you're a lifesaver, you're amazing. We love satellite investigations. I was like, tell 3 friends. Great.
That's right.
Right. So this guy shows up to the county jail, and would you know it, that the guy got released like that morning. And we're like, oh man, what are we going to do here? So it's like, all right, well now there's some legwork. We thought we had an easy layup to do, but now there's more work to do. So we start doing some research, trying to track the guy's family down, and we end up tracking people down. An old roommate, that guy's a bum, so-and-so. Well, the guy, we tried to contact a parole officer to see when he was checking in, because the guy had parole, and he was due that Friday to check in for parole. Then my client calls me on Thursday. He goes, guess what? I'm like, what? He goes, your boy couldn't stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
He actually violated parole or probation. And then Thursday he was back in jail.
That made it easy.
And we were able to go in and get it done. It's like, you can't make that stuff up. But what that, having the relationships, this was a long story to get to a short point. Having the relationships of, these associations like, ALPI for Arizona, NCISS, NALI, and Telnet, these national associations, and even WAD for the international stuff. You had mentioned attorneys are starting to go international, and that's true. And not only are the attorneys going international, but their clients go on vacation, right? So I've had that too. Where, hey, my client was in Rome and had a car wreck. I needed a local investigator to help me facilitate getting the accident report and doing all this. His question to me was, do you know anyone who speaks Italian? I was like, well, how about if I got you somebody in Rome? He's like, you can do that? I was like, of course I can do it. And within like 3 hours, I had him like 4 names. You call these 4 investigators to help you out, right? So again, makes me look like $1 million. It extends, my reach of things, right? I'm able to go and do that. And, everybody was happy. And at the end of the day, I got a story to tell on this Arizona thing. It was funny, but we were able to get it done. We needed the guy to sign some releases or something. It was like one of these class action suits with the, this guy served in the military, and he had the earplugs, right?
Oh, yeah.
So it was one of those cases, and his life has been so messed up by the damage. Like, he's literally committing crimes now for this. So it's kind of a sad story, but, and you never want to see somebody who served our country go down that route. So we were able to do our part to actually get this guy, what he needed to do. And that was based on relationships, right? And we're not seeing that from these younger folks who are not assertive like that.
Well, differently. So this is a great point, though, because they don't. My son is a cybersecurity degree major in college, and we're talking about how do you learn more about that topic. And I said, well, what associations are you interested in joining? What newsletters do you get? How many webinars are you on? There's all kinds of information out there. You don't just have to go to Google and type in cybersecurity. And he knows that, but he thinks about this differently. And he didn't think about like, oh, I didn't know that I could join an association. And I'm like, well, yeah, they have some associations have student membership, blah, blah, blah. Right. And so his approach to learning more about it was to ask his friend zone and people in his sphere of influence, which include people that he's never met before, but he's gaming online with them. Oh, yeah. and I'm like, what? But so the perception for this new generation is just different. And I don't disagree with you that they are less comfortable with the kind of the face-to-face talking than, and I don't mean to disparage a whole generation, but many of them are not comfortable with going up and talking to somebody and just literally breaking the ice and saying, hey, this is what I'm interested in doing. Do you know anybody, or do you need assistants there.
Yeah.
But they are much more comfortable with technology than even we are.
Yeah.
And that, I think, will be the benefit. Every generation has its strength. Our generation was kind of the grown up and the latchkey kids. And like I said earlier, digital and analog. But, we know how to build Legos and build computers. Right. Yeah. So we have that capacity. They're much more in that metaverse. They're in that virtual reality space where they're living, working, and playing. And so they understand when the whole gender situation was coming out in 2018, I was talking to a fellow investigator who was at Facebook, and he kept referring to the subject or a person involved in this investigation as they. And I said, how many people do we have involved in the investigation? I'm confused. You keep using this term they. And he explained to me how this was the she, her, him, he, they, them situation.
Not touching it, bro. Not touching it. I'm not saying anything.
No, and neither am I. But it was interesting that he was a much younger person than I am, right. And his generation understood that lingo. Yeah. Way before my generation did. Right. And it's because they've been immersed in it. And so they have tons of information at their fingertips. Whether they use that information to their advantage is really the question, because I don't know that they might understand what happened in World War II because they read about it online, right. But they didn't live it. And neither did I, by the way. I look to generations that did to help me understand it, right? And I don't think they have that.
You look at it, just 9/11, right? There's a whole generation of people that just don't understand
totally
what that was like. And me being from New York and being right in the middle of everything, it's like, how do you explain that to somebody? You can't. You just can't.
No, you actually have to have done it, and that's the thing. The world changed for us in 2001. For us, we were all working at that time, I'm sure, or in school, and so our understanding of the world changed significantly. And one of the things I talk about, I help a lot of veterans and law enforcement folks transition into the private sector, and I try to push it, understanding that, hey, you don't have to necessarily go work for X company. You could start your own PI firm and you could do your own thing, and helping them understand that world as well. But because we've been at war for the last 20 years, we now have a generation of people that's really all they've known. They've worked for the government or they've worked in law enforcement. And now they're transitioning, they're coming out into the private sector, and they aren't really well equipped with how the private sector works and how do you get things done, and everything costs money, by the way. And if you want advice, sometimes you have to pay for it. Yeah. But they don't necessarily, they are not armed with those sensibilities.
Well, it's not just military. I get this all the time with folks that are serving or involved with working for the 3-letter agencies. And they leave and they're now opening up their own thing, and it's really like, where do I begin? How do I start? And I get so much feedback from the podcast from people just appreciative. They're like, wow, I'm getting exposure from different people in the industry, and I'm learning so much. Thank you for that. Or I was on the fence of whether or not I should actually start my own thing, and you've kind of pushed me into doing that. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And I'm just like, the best thing you can do, in my opinion, is start your own business. Like, there's nothing like it. If you have that entrepreneurial spirit, you got to do it. But the thing is, it's work. It's not like,
that's the job.
Hey, I'm open for business. Ooh, I'm going to be a millionaire. No, there's a lot of like blood, sweat, and tears. I get this all the time. People are like, when do you sleep, man?
Well, and I think what people don't realize is that we are business owners first.
Yes. Yeah.
We are small business owners, or hopefully someday soon, big business owners, right? Yeah. First. And our service is information, investigation, a sense of relief, use whatever acronym you want, but we are business owners first.
So that ties it into the whole subject at hand today, right? Rolling with this whole metaverse thing and embracing it and understanding, like, you need to know what coding is. You don't need to be a coder, but you need to understand it, right? Don't fight technology. If you're going to go work for somebody and they want you to use Dropbox, or they want you to use Google Calendar or something like that, and you're not down with the PC or the Mac or whatever,
Right.
get down with the PC or Mac, and understand that that's what you need to do to survive. There's so many tools that make it much easier for us to do what we need to do.
And to get educated, and by the way, to get educated on how to use those things, we used to have to go to a library or to the Encyclopedia Britannica to learn how to do something. We all had those that were sold door to door, right? Yeah. But now you just Google something. If you don't know, if you're running into a problem, Google, how do I do X?
Or ask Siri.
And ask Siri.
Hey Siri, how do I do this? Right.
And which, that could be a whole different discussion on what are the risks.
Gospel? Yeah.
what are the risks of information and how that is Siri influence us?
Is Siri gospel? That's a new topic.
That's the challenge, right? We have automation all around us, and we have the audacity to say, I'm not a computer guy. Yeah. Well, but you use Siri, you use the Amazon products, right. You're in it. You just maybe aren't as comfortable with it, or you don't have the vocabulary around it. But the most important thing, Matt, is that we need people to stay in this environment, to work, to stay in the economy, because we are seeing what happens when people go, I don't want to deal with this pandemic anymore. I used to do X job. Now I don't want to do that anymore. I'm just going to retire. I'm going to go do a lesser job. Right. I want people to live to their fullest. They have to use technology to do that nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah. And you will succeed in this business. If you want to get into investigations, there's work out there. We were talking offline before this. One of the biggest problems that we have as business owners right now is we're too busy. There's too much work. And we can't service our clients, So we were talking about, sizing up your business. Like, how do you do that, right? How do you build it up to make it serviceable when you're just selling, Scot Walker, but people want to hire Scot Walker, right? So how do we?
Hard to recreate.
Yeah, what does that look like? Yeah, it's a real challenge, and. I just hired somebody recently, and I'm so excited because the guy showed up to the job interview, he did some research, and he was talking to me about stuff, and I could hear the excitement in his voice. And I was just like, yes, I told him, I was like, dude, I want to train you. I'm going to teach you how to do all of this stuff. I'm excited to teach. I'm looking to mentor somebody, this is real. I don't know if you understand the opportunity that I'm giving you here. Because this kid's got the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Now I don't think he's going to go out and start his own business and steal my clients. I'm not worried about that because my clientele is based upon my relationships and reputation. Right. Yeah. But I want to raise up people beneath me to, always have your replacement, right?
Always be training that.
Right. Always train up, always have an exit strategy. They always tell you that too. When you mentioned earlier, hey, I'm a business owner. I'm not just an investigator. That is true. That's where I am right now. And I'm slowly transitioning myself away. I do like to get out and do the work every now and then, but I would rather be the owner than the investigator. And that sometimes, as much as I think I'm there and I'm now the owner full time, it doesn't happen.
We'd like to think that,
certain clients are like, no, you're going out there. But I'm like, okay, well, I'm going out there, but here's my rate. Yeah. Whoa, that's much more expensive than you usually charge. It's like, well, you're telling me to get away from my regular responsibilities. That's what I make when I do the things I'm supposed to do. Oh, okay. I want to have you on this, so I'm going to pay you for that. Right.
And I think that the cool thing is what we see from recent studies about entrepreneurship is folks will be much more cyclical. They're not getting into a job and then they're going to stay there for 20 or 30 years, get the gold watch and retire on a pension and go fishing. Those pensions are largely gone or watered down to 401ks. So where our parents were doing those things, my father-in-law worked for Boeing and McDonnell Douglas was an aerospace engineer, and he retired and got the gold watch and didn't have to do anything for 20 years until he passed. Right. these current generations and future generations aren't going to have that. So what they'll do is they'll come out, they'll do some entrepreneurial things. They'll go work for somebody like you, Matt, and learn those things. And then they'll break out, they'll do their own thing. Then they'll come back and they'll maybe work for a bigger organization. And these things will just kind of happen in a cycle. I think, to your point, what we need to do is keep encouraging that, keep encouraging people to keep learning, keep moving forward, keep trying to figure things out, and keep finding relevance. Yeah. And if you say, I'm not getting in the metaverse, or I'm not going to be on Facebook, or I'm not going to do these things, you're potentially stunting your growth as a person and in the economy. And I don't want to see that. My sense of urgency is, things have been bad. I don't think they're going to get any better. In fact, I hope they don't, but I think they're going to get worse. Yeah. How do we overcome that? Well, we have to science this stuff. Yeah. We have to overcome it through knowledge and technology and growth.
See, I look at it a different way, man. I'm not a doom and gloomer like you. Shame on you. I'm just like
a realist.
No, I'm more like, wow, there's just so many opportunities here. Mm-hmm. Now it's time to hustle. Mm-hmm. Now is when I'm gonna leave my mark. I'm gonna, it's my time to knock it out of the park. And yes, it's going to take more work. And yes, my family may see a little bit less of me for some time, but to me, I always have the end game, in mind. Like, okay, so, if I can bust my butt now and get the infrastructure in place, scale it, right? The scalability, that's going to make things easier for me when I hit that certain age for the golden parachute, right? No one's given me a watch. No one's given me a pension, but I'm buying my own watch and I'm making my own pension, and you can too, like if you do it correctly, and, and you embrace change, because you can't stop it, and just roll with the punches, really.
Embracing technology, like being on a podcast or listening to a podcast. I think, podcasts will continue to grow in the way people learn. Your podcast is a perfect example of that. You open that up. And by the way, I don't know that anybody pays for your time and your effort and your energy, with the exception of your sponsors. But what a great way to learn. You take an hour out of your day or out of your week to listen to something and actually get something of benefit out of it.
Yeah. And that's, I don't get paid by anybody, but you can, I'm on Venmo. You can find me.
Yeah. You want to Venmo me.
Yeah. It's all good. But what they can do is join Investigator's Toolbox, which is, the site that I have created that pushes these ideas, right? And that has that clubhouse feel to it, which is something we actually do. We do like a Q&A clubhouse once a month with investigators, guys that have been in the industry for a long time, that are making themselves available to answer your questions, right? And it's like one of these things, like, why are you not in it? Why are you not doing it? And more, as the site grows, and it is growing, you're getting the benefits of my experience and the hundreds of other seasoned investigators that are parts of it. Like you have that direct relationship with them through this. So it's almost like creating a metaverse.
Yeah, it is.
That's essentially what I've done. Right.
Yeah,
so
metaverse is just another word for community.
I'm going to get a letter from Facebook.
From Meta.
Zuckerberg's going to be like, cease and desist that terminology. We own Meta. Okay.
You can't say that. Yeah. You didn't say Metaverse Toolbox or Meta Toolbox. I think you're okay. No trademark infringement there.
Yeah. Meta Toolbox. That's good. I'm going to use that one. Yeah. Time to rebrand.
Yeah. You should have a sub brand. Yeah. I like that.
There you go.
But you're right. We got to build communities and be more inclusive than exclusive.
Yeah, and that's what it comes down to. And what's so cool about something like that is that it's all over the place, right? So there are people that are part of this, and you get it in the associations also, where you've got not just people from your own state, it's people from other states and people that even other countries. I know, like Toolbox, I've got 6 or 7 different countries in there. Some guy from Paris joined when I was in Telnet. I was like, yay, we got France. So that's another one. It's cool. It's cool to see it all growing and happening. And just staying on top of things is really what you need to do. So don't be discouraged if you're out there and you're starting your business and you're failing, or maybe you've hit a wall with where you are with your business, and just try a different approach. Look at things differently. Network with other investigators and really figure out what's working for them. And, the tools are there. You just need to utilize them and use them. No one's going to give you anything. You got to go and do it. That's really what it comes down to. So,
and what we do is changing our risks. Our risk profile for our clients are changing.
Yeah.
They're much more concerned with online risks than ever before. Cybersecurity was the number one issue behind, I think, climate change for CEOs. That were surveyed in 2021. So cybersecurity, you might think you're not a cybersecurity expert, but and you might not be. I am not, but I am a cyber investigator and I understand the cyber world. So if we can help our clients better understand what the cyber risks are out there, we need to be doing that, offer that.
Yeah. I mean, listen, what's Russia doing to Ukraine now?
Yeah.
Cyber attacks. That's yesterday they were just talking about it, right? They're trying to shut down their infrastructure, that way. So it's here to stay, and folks like your son who's getting into that, like, it's a good choice. I think so. Probably going to find a job. And be okay, But we're going to wind down here, Scott. This was awesome. I love this free flow back and forth, and it would be cool to do this in a year. Have you come back and be like, all right, where we blow hard?
Where are we? 2023,
right?
Yeah, 2022 in review.
Tell me about the Meta toolbox, Matt.
Which will be Web 4.0, maybe.
Exactly. If folks did want to get a hold of you, how would they find you?
You can go to my website. It's walkerinvestigations.page. Google tells me .page is more secure than .com. I don't know how, but that's what they say. So walkerinvestigations.page. You can find me on LinkedIn as well.
Okay, great. And we'll have the links in the show notes and all that. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was a lively and fun conversation. And I hope you guys gleaned some info from here. Just, we lit a fire under you to really go out there and do some things. So we do appreciate the support, all joking aside. And it's an honor to interview folks like Scott and get the stuff out there. So everybody have a good week, and we'll catch everyone next time on the next show. Thanks,
Matt.
We told you this was going to be a great episode. Thanks to Scott for coming on and having this much-needed conversation. We need to stay ahead of the changes to our industry, and this is helping us. We'd also like to thank Crosstracks, Scope Now, PI Institute for Education, and Satellite Investigations for sponsoring this show. So please support our great supporters. Have you checked out the Investigators Toolbox yet? Now's the time to get on board and join the fastest growing digital community for investigative professionals. Use code PIP201836 to save 10% on membership. If you have a question or a comment about the show, just email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible, and we'll be back next week with a new show. So make sure you tune in and stay safe out there.